Hey guys, what is happening? Welcome back to The Drip. Today we are going to do a maybe section part 2 in relation to foster care. We did our first segment in foster care of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we'll probably have some additions to that in the future. But
at some point.
Today we're going to discuss what we wish we had known before going into foster care, and maybe where we should have started last time, and I failed to do this, but it's very difficult to kind of talk about something that we're really intimately involved with without mentioning our children's names or going down that road. So we want to be protective of their own each individual unique journey, as well as just protect some legal requirements we have within the foster care system as well. So though we're going to try to relay these things we wish we knew, we're going to be vague about some of them intentionally to protect our children, as well as to make sure that we don't get into any legal binding, and maybe we'll talk about that at some point in time, some of the legal requirements of going into the foster care system. But today we are specifically going to discuss what we wish we had known prior to actually becoming foster or adoptive parents. So thanks for joining us, guys. I am Anthony Patton.
And I'm Janice.
And this is The Drip. So, we've talked about this so many times. Things we wish we had known. What did we wish we had known before going in? Because I can't remember if we talked about it already in the class, but maybe a reiteration. We went through training.
Yeah.
I think they called it MAP.
I think it's called something differently now.
Yeah.
I had heard in a class we were taking that they've changed up a bit of that, so it might be called something else now.
But there was, some prepping, parenting kind of classes, and they did talk about some of this stuff. But, I think what lacked, in my opinion, is the people who were teaching the classes either were not foster parents or had been foster parents a long time ago, and they weren't in the middle of actually
I think one of the
this.
gentlemen was. He and his wife had.
One of the helpers, yeah.
Yeah, one of the guys.
I think he was pretty early on, and
he had done a bunch of infant placements, like back to back to back. I think I remember him talking about. But I think they had only been doing it maybe a few months or a year or something at that point.
Yeah, actually I ran into him at DSS a little later on, where they had a placement that was with them for quite a bit of time, and ended up going back to the parent. And I know dealing with him and meeting him briefly, some of the sorrow in that. So
I think before we even get started, we should preface this by saying everything we talk about is we're not speaking for every single foster parent, every single foster family. Yeah. There's so many different stories that people have. So by no means are we encompassing everyone's experience. Yeah. And so if you're watching and you know someone, or you've had a different experience, or you've had a different experience in foster care, please know that we're not trying to speak for everyone, just our own personal experiences, maybe some things we've heard from some people we know or friends of ours that have also done it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is interesting, to make sure we understand that every single case is different, every single child is different, and every single biological parent is different. So every case is going to have a different feel and understanding to it. But, it's hard to encompass all that in a training class or training course. But these are hopefully helpful in some areas of things that we wish we had specifically known before getting into foster care. So,
sorry, something you made remind me. Yeah, I'm adding.
One more thing. Okay. Yeah. So, what's the first thing on your list of things you wish you had known?
First thing I wish I had known was the goal of social services is always reunification with a birth parent, parents, or family member, or maybe a close family friend. That's always what they want. That's always what they're looking for. That's always what they're working for. Adoption is the worst case scenario when you're working in the foster care system, which perhaps they tried to tell us, but I don't know. I think I was when we started doing foster care, we just wanted to adopt. And I remember telling them that, oh, no, we're not here to foster care. We're just here to adopt. And at that point, they had switched everything so that everyone got dually certified foster care and adoption, and they didn't do separate certifications anymore. It was all in one, and perhaps they've changed things further from that point. That was, I think, in 2016. So,
yeah.
But, at that point, I remember them saying, no, it's not really likely that you're going to go straight to an adoption. Most of the children are in foster care. Most of them are not freed for adoption. Most of them are going to go back to their families.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just didn't really get that, or I didn't understand it, or I didn't really believe them. I don't really know, but I just definitely thought the whole thing was going to be very different. And, we had said, oh, we're looking to get an infant. And they said, you and everybody else, we'll put you on the waiting list, but it's probably going to be a long time. And we said, oh, okay, well, while we're waiting for an infant, we'll just, take a temporary placement, while we're waiting. And then, didn't turn out to be temporary. In our case, most of our children have ended up staying with us. We've had 2 different placements that were with us very temporarily, and all of our other kids have ended up staying with us and are either adopted or are on their way to being adopted. But I think that's fairly unusual. I think in a lot of cases, their children either go back to their families or they move on maybe to another home. That's a more permanent home, because some people just want to do foster care and they don't want to adopt.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you guys don't know, us personally, we have 7 children, all of whom are either adopted or currently in care. And I think I came in and tackled the problem with the situation the exact same way. And I think something that really didn't sit well with me is we would see biological parents who weren't doing what the state was requiring. And the court documents always, all the way up until the point that they were actually adopted, listed return to parent as the goal. And that was a struggle to see on a court document every time we would go in for years and years. And our first placement took 5 years to actually go from initial placement to adoption. And the whole 5 years, the court document said return to parent.
Right, and every time you go to court, they'll say, okay, so reunification is still the goal, everybody. And they'll say, up until basically the kids were freed for adoption.
Yeah.
So,
and that's hard to see when you know.
But I think if you know going in that is the goal, and adoption, like I said, it is the worst case scenario. That's not what the state wants. So they're going to, fight to return the kids to their families as much as possible, which, is a good thing. It's a very good thing. It just doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah. And we've witnessed that. And just as a kind of a plug, there is, and this is any system at all that we're going to get into. So any governmental system, any authority system, there's always broken parts in it. We can easily call out the brokenness in any system. We can call it the brokenness in a church or in our own lives. That's easy to do. But what I would say is a positive is I kind of grew up with a stigma, probably because, we were a big homeschooling family and all this other thing. So I grew up with this like anti-CPS stigma almost, that they were out to destroy families and rip families apart, and it was not good. What we have witnessed, and I think both of us can speak to this, is we have witnessed that New York State's desire is to keep biological families together.
And they do everything they can. And sometimes in the broken system to the detriment of the children. But their goal is, yes, they do everything they possibly can to reunite those families.
Yeah, and we've discussed we find it to be enabling for the biological parents, and sometimes destructive because the department goes to such high levels to actually help these parents be reunited with their children.
Yes.
And we would find, and
sometimes it goes a little too far because there's a time where those kids need to move on.
They need some permanency.
Sometimes that doesn't happen. I think too, another thing that I didn't really realize, and I think is important for people who have grown up thinking, more negatively about the state or social services or CPS, and that's not everybody, but some people definitely have grown up thinking, they have a whole department for preventative care, and they work with families before CPS gets involved. They work to help families get whatever the things that they need. Perhaps it's, funding or, health insurance, or maybe apartment
basic
or
parenting classes,
or transportation, different places, or different things like that in order to help families not get to the point where their kids need to be taken away. And that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes they just come right into a situation where clearly the kids are in a lot of danger and they need to be removed from that situation. But sometimes there's not. And with our two of our kids, they were in preventative care with their biological father for about a year before they were finally,
removed,
where they tried to work with him to try to get them all the things that, that he needed to do in order to raise them properly. So,
and maybe just one more addition to the working with parents is, while they might be struggling because of the area that they're in life, whether in basic addiction or whatever the specific instance is, we have found that the requirements to actually be reunited are very low. There's very little that any of our cases have had to do to actually be reunited. So where we went from probably you and I struggling, we don't want a biological family to be broken apart. That's not our desire. We are stepping into a gap, to a need. Because we have seen that children, if they don't have a home to go into, that they end up going to a communal home. Like there's one called St. Catherine's up in Albany, New York, and where there's a lot of kids together with very few workers. It's not a family setting like what we get to be blessed to be able to have our children in. So definitely a huge need for the foster care segment. But also we have seen the byproduct of what happens when they are short on foster families, of where those kids end up going.
Or if the kids get moved too many times.
Yeah, and that's not a great environment. I think they're doing the best they can, but they're very much overwhelmed with kids and low staff. So it's a very tough situation. But so definitely wish we had known going in that the goal all the way up until the day of adoption is reunification with the parents. That can be challenging to work through sometimes.
Yeah. And the time frame, the time frame is much, much longer than...
Every case might be different.
But we've been consistently, like we're on our third case now and we're in year 4. We're consistently throughout, one of our cases was 5 years, another was 4.
Now we're in
another one that's over 4 years now, so I don't think that's uncommon, unfortunately, and it's supposed to be a lot shorter than that. It's on paper much, much shorter, but
that is definitely something we wish we had known. If you're going into a potential 4 or 5,
I think, I don't know, unfortunately it might change your mind about doing it because you have to put a lot of things on hold. You have to think, I don't know if I can move halfway through this. I don't know if I can... different things like that. We're in a different county and we may not be able to move anytime for the foreseeable future because you can't just, move out of state or move out of county, so knowing it's a 4 or 5 year, maybe long, up to that long process might, change how you view it. But
yeah,
I don't think for us it would have. It's just, I think it would have been nice to know. I think there would have been a lot of frustration in the first few years that we would have been able to get through easier. If we
early on were waiting for quicker resolution than what we were realizing was going to be the inevitability.
And we thought there was something wrong. I mean, we didn't realize, this is kind of how it goes. We just thought, what is going on, or...
And just so, I don't know where you're watching from, but on New York State paperwork, if a child is in care for 15 months out of 22 months, so they might come in and out of care, but if for a total of 15 months they're in care out of 22 months, then the state is legally bound to start to file termination proceedings on the biological parent. We thought that would be a quick process.
Well, we thought they would start filing at 15 months, and they did not. They did not start filing at 15 months. They didn't start filing for probably, I don't know, a year and a half probably, or more. I think it might have been closer to 2 years before they even started filing. And then that whole filing process is months and months long. And then they have to go to court and have all kinds of hearings, and that can be months and months and months long. And then they have more hearings after that, and then the adoption I think the adoption process was a year long for some of our kids. So it's just a very long.
Yeah. And one little hiccup in the court system will probably postpone your case out 6 months. So if you go in and
someone switches a lawyer, or someone doesn't show up, or we had stuff like that happen. Someone didn't show up to sign paperwork, or halfway through the paperwork they decided they didn't want to finish it that day, or someone one time said they wanted to fire their lawyer and get a new lawyer. Yeah. That's it. Immediately 6 months out, they book the next court hearing.
Yeah.
So.
And that can be really frustrating for us as we were thinking there was going to be quicker resolution. So definitely something we wish we had known prior. So what else?
What else? I was talking to someone last week, and we had started talking about foster care, and I don't remember what I said, but I said something about some of our children, and this person said, "Oh, wow, that was really real. The way you're talking about this is really real." And it kind of made me feel kind of bad. Like, oh, am I speaking too honestly about this? Am I being too candid? But also, I do want to be candid and honest if someone really is considering foster care. It's part of, you count the cost. Is this something that you can really do? Because once you start, you shouldn't stop. So I do want to be... And so I'm sorry if sometimes when we talk about things, it sounds like we're being harsh.
Yeah. We don't mean you can never stop. We mean once you take a child in, it shouldn't be, this is too difficult.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I mean, don't do it for 40 years. Like once a child, like what we decided, once a child's in our home, like they're in our home, we're not going to, have them removed. So, you want to count the cost and what is this really going to look like for my family. So I do, when someone comes and talks to us about foster care, I try to be brutally honest because I think I had very many misconceptions going in, and it took a long time to work through some of those things and learn from some of those things. So I'm sorry if it seems like we're being, or me, if I'm being very harsh. I'm just trying to be candid and honest. And I think for the first, I didn't realize how hard the first few months of our first placement would be.
So I'll speak to this maybe for a second, because some of this is on me. So if there's a couple that's going to, and you can be a single and do foster care, there's no issue with that. But for a couple, if you think of like a child that's going to come into your home through biological means, right? So you get pregnant and everyone's excited, and then you have 9 months, or whenever you find out, 8 months or 7 months, if you're really wondering why you're throwing up all the time. But regardless, you have time, right, to prep, and people will throw a baby shower, and people will do this, and everyone's excited to help out with the baby, and so with foster care, what we've found,
they're excited about for you, they're excited for the children. Yeah.
And then that new precious life comes in, and usually the parents will take off work for a while. They're going to go on leave for a while, have some time bonding with that child, and getting that child used to the new routine in the home. And so there's a lot of prep work that goes in for biological parents to have that new life come into your home. And this is a little different for every foster care case, but generally it's happening rapidly. They call you and you need to make a decision within hours. And that child, from the call to entry into your home, could be 5 hours or less. And so you don't have all this prep time. And now they're coming in generally with very little, with nothing. And,
they come in with a lot of emotions and trauma and baggage.
Yeah. They come in with a lot
They don't come in with material possessions that can help you take care of them. You have to scramble to get all that stuff,
Like the day of, you're getting car seats or diapers or formula, it's a lot of, you're scrambling
moving
a lot.
beds around, maybe.
Just rearranging your house. And depending, some people might be more prepped for that call. That's for our cases, they were pretty rapid. I don't think we were expecting how rapid they were going to be. And you can say no when a placement comes in, but for us, we thought, we can manage this. But what I did is I just kept working and going back to work, and now you're kind of stuck at home trying to manage introducing a new family member into our home, and having them become an active member of our home. That's much more difficult than we anticipated. I think you can think of this very rosy, like, hey, a kid's going to come in and they're going to be part of your family. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be great. And they're coming with all their own past and their own family situation and all that they came out of. And they're not usually removed from a good situation, obviously.
Well, but it's still the only situation they've ever known. So it doesn't really matter what kind of place or whatever was their, whatever they were used to is what they were used to. So they don't for the majority of the time, think it's a horrible situation. They think
It's normal.
It's normal, and it's the people I love, and it's the home that I know, and now I'm with strangers, and they don't understand me, and they don't understand any of my habits or my needs or my wants, or, with our first two children, I don't think they'd ever been told no before. And so it was just, the first few months were just really, really hard because there was no rules in their past, and we had rules, and it was just really, really hard for them.
Yeah. You take something off the shelf at the store and they're told no, and they're just instantly down on the ground screaming like they're being murdered.
And you can't pick them up because then they say, don't touch me, you're hurting me in public in front of everybody. And, so just, it was really a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And that's not been the case with all of our placements. I would say that our first placement was the most difficult for us and for our kids that came. I think the other kids that have come, I don't know. It's just the transition was a little bit easier for all of us. And maybe we just knew better what to expect and how to handle things a bit better. But I think of some of the behavior problems that we had, they're not common in most children. So it was just very, very difficult. Yeah. And I
don't think we prepped our son very well either.
At all. Yeah. We had no support. We didn't know.
Our son was not prepped well either because we didn't know what we were getting into. So he kind of thought like, hey, I'm going to have new siblings. And so he wanted to treat them like siblings, and they did not want to be treated like siblings.
He was a stranger. I mean, he was a stranger to them, and we were strangers.
He called her sister, and that turned in, she started yelling at him. That was probably the first day. I'm not your sister, and over, that really hurt him. And so those are things we had to kind of work through to, in the future, prep some of our children for when we're going to have a new placement about, what this really is. And we weren't ready for that at first.
No, and I don't think we had any help. We hadn't set anything up. We hadn't set up any help at all. And it was just me trying to figure it all out at home by myself. And I remember one day, it was probably a couple days in, my mom took one of the kids for like 45, it was literally like 45 minutes to the store with her or something. And I just went home and like sat on the couch for like 45 minutes. And it was good. I needed that.
A quick break.
I think I slept for like a few minutes. So I think probably should have had a little more help. But again, we didn't know that we were going to need it. So if somebody was going into that, I would say, line up some extra help for those first few. And you may not need it. With some of our kids, we didn't need it. Everything went smoothly. Everything went really well.
And so, again, each and every state has their own different policies. So you guys would have to look into your state's specific policies if you're not in New York. But in New York, they have something called the Prudent Parenting Act, which actually allows us to have anyone at all that we trust babysit our children. It didn't used to be like this in the past. You used to have to get certified through New York State in order to even be a babysitter. But now the Prudent Parenting Act says anything we would do with our own biological children to an extent that we can allow our foster child to do.
As long as it aligns with the rules.
With the rules of the department.
Of the foster care unit.
So if we would let our own child be babysat by one of our family friends, then we can let our new placement be babysat by one of our family friends. That might not be wise for the first couple of weeks. We've noticed a lot of behavioral issues in the first couple of weeks for all of our placements.
I would say the first, depending on how old they were, but definitely our first placements, I would say 6 months. 6 months, I think, were really
hard.
Really rocky for our first children.
And so what probably we did not register is you're not having a newborn baby that's so sweet and they're your biological son or daughter. It's you have a stranger coming to live in your home, and with all the baggage you can imagine of just having a standard stranger come and live with you. But they don't view themselves as part of your family at all at first, and I think we had a misconception that was going to be the case. That took a lot of time.
I think we thought we were going to view them that way, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And again, with some of our other children, I think that was one of our other points was some kids are easier to bond with and some are not. And I don't think that, again, that's one of those things that when you say, someone says, wow, that's really heavy. That's really real. I can't believe you said that. And And maybe not even in a bad way. I don't think they even mean it in a bad way. It's just not something I think that people say. And I remember with our first placement, just how hard it was. And I thought it was going to be this like love at first sight kind of thing. And it didn't happen. And I just remember feeling really, really guilty about that. And I would Google, what do I do if I don't really like my foster child? Or what do I do if I don't love my foster child right away? And just the things that people who are not foster parents say online, just the mean, nasty, hateful things that are said to people who have no idea what they're talking about because they haven't actually been in this situation, doesn't help, doesn't help you to understand it. Sometimes that happens, and just give it time. Give it time. Be patient, be kind, be loving. And maybe some of it will get resolved and maybe some of it won't, but it will definitely get better. It will definitely get better. It just might take time.
And for us who are believers, we can trust that the Lord commands us into love. So there is a vast difference, between we will love this child. That's something we just said we were going to do. So we're going to love this child. We're going to treat them instantly like they're our own biological child, but that maybe what you would feel with a new child in your home, like that bonding.
I don't know if it's different with men and women. I don't really know, but
I've actually counseled, even some women with biological children who have said this very thing about their own. Like I'm really struggling because I don't think I love my second child like I loved my first child, or I don't love my fourth child like I love my second child.
I'm not bonding with this child like I did with my other children. But again,
every child's different.
I never heard that until years later, when I think I probably shared my experience, and then another mom, or more than one mom, I think said, "Oh, I felt that with my biological children. I don't know why you're beating yourself up about this. I didn't even feel that with my biological children that I carried inside of my body for 9 months." But I'd never heard, really anybody talk like that before. Nobody was honest about that. And it was just like, what is wrong with you? You shouldn't even be. If you can't love this child, then you shouldn't even be a foster parent. Give them to someone who will love them. What are you doing? Where it's like, well, I'm acting in love. I just, emotionally, I'm just not feeling like I'm in love with this person. But again, like that grows, it just takes time.
Yeah. And I think that emotional high, the emotional feeling is what we're looking for.
Well, it helps. It helps you get through the really rough days,
Well, that was the other thing, good segue, is I don't think we were really prepped to understand this, that when you have a child who's, say, 10 or 12, 13 in your home, you have had that many years of kind of past history with them, right? All those experiences, all those life situations that you can look back on, and you kind of have a wealth of relationship. And so when you have an older child that's placed into your home, you don't have that to look back on. So it's not like, hey, my teenager is acting out now, and I have all of those years that we had together to look and say, look at the relationship that we had.
And we'll get that back one day.
Yeah, we'll have that back one day. You don't have that. So what you have is...
Or my teenager is just really difficult, but I know deep down she really loves me.
Yeah.
Because we have this relationship for the past...
I remember what it was like having her, grow up in my home.
Right.
Or, hey, when he came, to be in our home and he was placed, well, now there's behaviors that you would see exhibited in a teenager. And those, you don't have any wealth of relationship to fall back on. And I think... we didn't realize the struggle that was going to be early on, of saying, oh, now we have an older child in our home who has vast behavioral issues, and we have no resource to pull back in of like relationship equity, if you will. And
also, I think too, kind of on that is bringing an older child in your home, you haven't built up to that stage. You haven't learned... We have these years of experience to get up to this point. All of a sudden, you're thrown into this situation. And again, depending on the age of your kids, but we had a teenager come into our home, and all of a sudden, like, I have no idea what to do in middle school. I have no idea what to do with IEPs, and I don't even know what that means. What does IEP even mean? And now I'm going to meetings, and these people expect me to know what I'm talking about, and I have no idea. anything about school, anything about middle school, anything about special needs or, nothing.
And they're asking questions about the
And you're trying to learn
past. Yeah.
how to be a parent to a teenager when
So what
you've
were they
never
like in-
built up to that.
Yeah,
It's just,
So what was their past schooling like? I don't know. What was their past family life? I don't know. What was their, and they're almost.
Is this normal for them? I don't know. I don't know what's normal and not normal.
Yeah.
Do they always act like this? I don't know. I just met them last week.
And
I don't know.
Even it's not just the school, it's many people. They will assume that you have all the info, and when you don't, they almost treat you oddly. Like, how could you not have any info? But that's probably another thing too, is you get very little info about the past unless that child is willing to share things with you. You don't get a book of their past or their past experiences or their past school. You get very little information about that child except for what they're going to willfully share with you. And if you could know anything about children at all, the information that children relay is not always accurate.
It's not accurate at all.
We've heard lots of mixed stories over the years.
You said you were 7 when that happened, but now you're saying you were 10. It cannot possibly have been both.
Yeah. So what else?
What else? What do you have? I think, I think I probably did think that sometimes the children would be viewed differently than other children their age. But I don't think I was prepared for that to happen. Sometimes at school or in public, sometimes in your family, they're not viewed the same way as other children are viewed. There's like a stigma around adoption and foster care kids.
Yeah.
And even in your own family, you might have people that just, maybe they have a hard time bonding with your kids, and so they just don't seem like they love them as much as their other biological relatives.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't expecting that. And that was, I think that's been a challenge over the last few years.
Yeah. I think that difficulty might stem, even something we've had to work through is that child technically, and it's in truth, they can be removed from your home in 10 days at any time. Mm-hmm. And so, when we took a new placement in and, we view instantaneously, that's our child until the state removes them. That's the Lord's plan. But until that happens, they're our child. So we're discussing like, hey, this is an infant. So, hey, you might take your first steps in this new room we're redoing. Like, yes, maybe if they are to stay with us. Mm-hmm. But there's a tension that always exists that I don't think I was ready for, that any of your children could be removed at any point from your home. And I think it's very hard.
It's a hard way to live.
That. Yeah.
It's a hard way to live like they're mine and they're part of my family and they're always going to be my kids, and I'm not going to view or treat them or have anybody else view or treat them differently, while also holding in your mind they could leave. Mm-hmm. And I think for some people they can't handle that, and so they just don't even want to build a relationship with your kids because they think it's not, they might leave and I might be hurt, and so I just don't even really want to invest in that person. Mm-hmm. Unless I know they're going to be here for a while.
Yeah. And we shared, on the good, the bad, and the ugly of foster care, I've gotten the comments so many times, like, are you going to keep them? Like, so it's a very big stigma around the foster care system, and probably with truth in some families, if I'm being honest, about this, but I don't think that's the normal, at least from the families we've been connected to. The normal nature is, these are my children, and yes, they may be removed, but until they are, I'm going to treat them like my children. And I think some of our even family members have struggled to really view them as, their nieces or nephews or grandkids or whatever, because they think this child could be removed. So I'm going to be cautious about building a relationship.
I mean, I've had family members say like, well, I just don't really know them that well. I just really haven't spent that much time with them. Whereas like I've spent the same amount of time with your kids as you've spent with my kids. There's no difference here. It's just your kids are biologically yours and mine might be moved, and that. And so you can't emotionally connect with them because I don't know, I'm not exactly sure the whole.
I think it's more pointed, depending on your beliefs here, but my strong belief is that children are a gift from God, given by God, and can be taken by God whenever He so chooses. When you're in the foster care system, this becomes a stark reality. You know, there's a really strong, real possibility that this could happen within our home. That is a strong, real possibility with even a home of biological children, through accident or disease or death or, whatever that situation is. God could call that child home to glory at any time. It's just we don't view it like that in the home.
Right. Have you ever heard someone who was having a baby and they said, well, I don't want to have a baby shower because my child might die, and I would feel really bad if you bought them clothes and then they died and then you wasted your money on my child. But I've done that, like, no, I don't want you to make me a meal because the baby might go somewhere else and then I'll feel really guilty that you made me a meal and I ate that meal and then the baby left.
Yep.
And I've literally had these conversations over the past few weeks with people. No, I don't want you to buy her anything because she might leave and then I'll feel guilty that you bought her a baby outfit and then she left.
Yep.
Which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I agree, but it is.
But it's like life, you're like, oh, but I would feel really bad and I don't want someone to get invested and and then have the baby leave and then everybody's heartbroken and so it's definitely a challenging way to live.
It is. But you also have to remember, like, whether it's a week or, like, we had a placement for 2 weeks, roughly, of an infant right in the hospital for 2 weeks, and, we bonded to him very quickly and loved him.
It was a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a
loved
week.
him dearly, and so that's just the little bit of time that God gave us. And so, so that's the love that we can pour out into that child's life for the little season that we have. If they are to leave, if they're to go back, there's another infant we had just for about a month. Didn't even actually ever come home from the hospital to our home. Went home from the hospital to another home because he was in the NICU. And but that's just a small season that God gave us with that child. So that's the time that God provided, so it's the time we're going to use. And we're going to use it to the best of our ability and love that child the best we're able, and trust.
Well, I think
God
that's
for the
I think
outcome.
that's another thing I didn't like.
Weeping on camera.
You don't know. You may not see the good or the purpose of what you do, ever. You might, but you might not. And it seems, I know with our the last baby that we had, he was in the NICU down in Westchester, and I was going down every day. And, I think I remember telling you, like, if he leaves, then what was the purpose of this? What was the purpose of me spending 4 or 5 hours a day driving down there, neglecting everybody and everything else in my life to go down there every day to hold him if he's not even going to come home and he's going to go somewhere else? And what was even the purpose of that? Why did they even call me? And I would have been better not even knowing or not even getting to know him. And I don't think that we have an answer for that. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know what the purpose was, and maybe the purpose will never be seen by me or you or, I don't know. But God has a purpose. There was a reason for it, even if, we never know what it was.
Yeah.
So, and I think that falls back to just trusting in God. And I don't think I knew how I would learn to trust God more through this. That I think has been sorry.
Yeah. There is difficulty in discussing some of this stuff because it's very close to home for us. These are very real, some recent, some raw, some very painful situations. But where we fall back is we need to trust in the Lord for the outcome of these situations. And some of the greatest things that can be done in life are also some of the hardest things. So these videos are not meant, these segments are not meant to discourage. They're meant to prepare. They're meant to prep for a possibility of what could be an outcome. But they're also meant to encourage that this is a great, great need across the country, across the world. And if we, as the church, are going to truly believe in the sanctity of life, if we're not going to be anti-abortion, but we're going to be pro-life, if that's the truth, if that's really the case, then what are we doing as the church to step into that? What are we doing to actually make provision for those children that need a home? Because we're saying, don't have an abortion. Well, the reality is, and the stark reality is, many of those parents are following the model we see in Isaiah, where it says, can a mother forget her baby? Can a biological parent forget even the child within their womb? And the reality is yes, absolutely. And so we, as followers of Christ, who believe in the sanctity of life, can step in and fill a gap. Whether that's permanent or temporary, for that season, that child needs a place to go. And it can be very challenging. It can be very difficult just in the emotional standpoint of life. It can be very challenging having New York State always involved, in your home, having uncertainty, having all those things. But I think we can both say with certainty that, we wouldn't go back and not do this.
No, I think probably one of the thing I wish I had known, probably the most important thing I wish I had known would be that God can heal a broken heart over foster care. Not that, we have kids clearly that we still miss, and they're being raised somewhere else in this state or this country, and we're probably never going to see them again. And that, when you think about it, is really sad. But I think people don't do foster care because of that reality, and they know that that's going to hurt, and they don't want to go through that. But I think, it's important to know that God can use that, and God will heal that hurt and enable you to see the goodness that came out of that. I know with our first baby that left, he was with us for a week, and at that point we had several kids that I really, really struggled with when they were placed with us. It was really, really hard. And like I said, I had difficulty. We all had difficulty bonding together. And I think I started thinking like, well, maybe I'm just not capable of loving a child the way I thought I would be capable of loving a child. Maybe there's just something wrong with me, and maybe I shouldn't have done this in the beginning. And then we had that baby, and I had no problem loving him from the second I first saw him. And, it was just like, I don't know. We just loved him so much, and it was a pleasure to get up in the middle of the night and feed him. And I just wanted to get home. If I was out, I just wanted to get home so I could just look at his beautiful face. And it was so hard when he left. And but I remember being really thankful that, even though we only had him a week, I think God showed me that I was capable of having that bond sometimes with children, even though it doesn't always happen. And I think that was really good and encouraging for me to understand that, sometimes the placements are easy and sometimes they're not, but I was capable of loving that way with certain children immediately, and some others it took time to grow into that kind of love. But I think, my trust in God has grown so much over the past few years. Whether, kids stay or whether they leave, I'm not really we'll get through whatever happens, and I trust that God is using it for his own purpose and his good, whether or not we ever see what fruit is born out of this or not. And maybe it's just for someone else to see, or for someone else to experience, or to be an encouragement to somebody else. Sometimes you don't know, but I think just like trusting in God, and I know that my trust in God has grown so much through this, because of this. And so I would encourage anybody who is, thinking, I don't know that I could do this. It might be too much. What you feel like you can't do, God can do. And God can use you to do things like this. And God can work through, some of the hardest things, like a child going home can be, or a child staying. Sometimes that's really hard too. If we're being candid, there are some placements where, we prayed very much the child would be able to go home, and then they weren't able to. And that was also, challenging in its own way for us or for that child. So.
Yeah. And we, maybe we can cover this in a different segment, but we can't divorce our feelings from the child's feelings either, because, these children love their parents, and though they're not acting rightly and often need to be removed, they still love their parents, and we don't want to hurt that relationship. We don't want to speak ill of their biological parents, and so it's a tough balance of trying to work out the child's desires to go back and be with their family with how can we take care of them this season too. So maybe we can cover that in a different episode.
Yeah, because I think that's a whole lot of how the child feels and their emotions, and that changes over time as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think there's many more things we wish we knew.
Really? Yeah.
We've gone on long time here, and we'll leave you here, and we'll continue in this segment in foster care. But now that we've done some of the good, the bad, the ugly, and now some of what we wish we had known prior, again, hopefully you weren't discouraged, but encouraged that though you can't, God can. And where you think I'm not able, we strongly feel the exact same way. We were not able, but the Lord has grown us both tremendously through doing foster care and trusting in Him for the outcome and for His good purposes to be revealed, not only in our lives, but in these children's lives. So incredible need. So if you want more info on how you can get involved in the foster care system, you can put a comment below with your email, or email us directly. Any of our church leaders you can always find at their first name at our website. So Anthony at livingwater4u.org is how you can reach me, or any of our other leaders that you can find on our website. We'd be happy to plug you into details of how you can get involved with the foster care system. If you just want some more private questions answered, we'd be happy to help and step in there however we can. Definitely want to support this ministry, and that's how we view it. It's a ministry the Lord has called us into, and support you guys in that, give you some prep and some work of what you might be getting yourselves into, just so you can know, not so you could be discouraged away from it. So appreciate you guys staying with us and joining us. If you are new to The Drip and this is the first episode you're on, we'd love if you subscribed and hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode of The Drip. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions in the comment box below. We'd love to cover some of those on the next segment here for foster and adoptive care. And if there's anything specific you'd like us to target, we'd love to try to get that in on a future episode. So appreciate you guys joining in, and love you for all that you guys have poured out into our lives. If we know you personally, I know many people have, though we didn't put people around us at first, many people have stepped in and filled that gap as we've continued down this process. I'm very thankful for that in our lives. So love you guys, and looking forward to see you on the next episode of The Drip.
Bye.